ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So, as you have seen in the topic and as I had informed you earlier, now we have a general idea of the Sankhya philosophy, a very ancient and very important philosophy, which is the father of all philosophies according to Swami Vivekananda. So, naturally, we had not gone into the main text of the Sankhya Karika, that is too elaborate. But as we had discussed, that I want to give you a little taste of the original text and how logical everything is in Indian philosophy, and I'm sure Western philosophy also. So today we will just see how logically Sankhya discusses its main theme. As we had discussed many times, this is the goal, this is the aim of all branches of Indian philosophy except the materialistic one like Charvak, etc. Those are actually not philosophies as such. So this is the main aim, that to rid us of all kinds of suffering for all time to come. That is freedom from all the suffering we encounter in our life. That is the goal of every Indian philosophy, and Sankhya, of course, is no exception. So today, its very first that sutra or shloka of the Sankhya Karika, that is the text which is followed by those who want to learn about in detail about the Sankhya philosophy, that is the Sankhya Karika, and its commentary on that by Vachaspati Mishra, Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi. So today we will just have a glimpse of that. The very first verse deals with the topic which we are going to discuss, the very first verse. So I'm sure you like the analysis and the logical way of thinking, and we can learn many things from that, I'm sure. So let's start. Now you see, in Indian tradition, the tradition is to start every such philosophical work or scripture by a Mangalacharan. Mangalacharan means it is a prayer through which we invite auspiciousness. So that's a prayer to God and the prayer to all acharyas so that they may be gracious to us so that we can understand these subtle things. That is the great tradition we have. So we will just start with the prayer with which this work Sankhya Karika starts. Okay. So this is the prayer which is there before you. So see what this says. Ajamekam lohita shukla krishnam bhavvi praja srijamana namama ajayetam jushamanam bhajante jahatyenam bhukta bhogam numastan. So Aja means unborn and Eka means one. And Lohita, Shukla, Krishna, all these are colors. So the first verse says, our reverential salutations to the one unborn, red, white and black that produces many offsprings. So what is the meaning of this? The one unborn is Prakriti. Okay, and these red, white and black, we've already discussed the gunas. So white stands for the Sattva guna, black stands for Tamo guna, and red activity stands for Rajoguna, the Rajas, Sattva and Tamas. That produces many offsprings, because we have seen that Prakriti, the one uncaused cause of the universe, produces the whole universe, gross and subtle. So the author is saluting that Prakriti, which is the cause of the whole universe. Then it says, we also bow to those unborn ones who, having recourse to her, renounce her after having enjoyed the pleasures bestowed by her. So this second salutation is to the Purusha. Purusha, as we know, Prakriti is only meant for the salvation of the Purusha. And Purusha also is unborn because it has no cause. It is the ultimate, one of the ultimate realities admitted by the Sankhya. So this unborn one, so they renounce Prakriti after having experienced it. All of us, finally, if we want to attain freedom, we have to renounce Prakriti. So Prakriti makes sure that the Purusha has all the experiences of Prakriti. When it realizes the nature of Prakriti and it realizes that till it identifies itself with Prakriti, there is no freedom, then it finally renounces Prakriti. So the salutation first is to Prakriti, then to Purusha, and then to the founder of the Sankhya philosophy and his disciples. So Kapilaya Mahamunaye Shishyaya Tasya Chasuraye Panchashikhaya Tatha Ishwara Krishnaya Ete Namasyamaha. So great Muni Kapila, then his disciple Asuri, and then his disciple Panchashikha, and also Ishwara Krishna, the writer of Sankhya Karika. So this salutation is by Vachaspati Mishra, who has written the commentary. So he salutes everybody, all the great acharyas, so that they may bestow their grace on him. Then he starts the commentary on the Sankhya Karika. So see how logically they proceed. First, before discussing the first verse of the Karika, he says, this is the tradition in Indian philosophy. You see, they first, whenever they are presenting something, they tell you about the subject matter. Because all those who want to study something, like in the books what we have, foreword and preface, etc., they tell us about what the book is. So Indian philosophy also, it tells us the subject matter. This is in great detail in some Vedanta texts. So when we study those, we will study that in great detail. But following the tradition, the Vachaspati Mishra also says in brief what the subject matter of the Sankhya philosophy is. So he says that in this world, if a doctrine is expounded by anyone, so that doctrine is listened to by only those who desire a knowledge of that doctrine. But one who expounds something which is not desired by anybody, if someone expounds something which is absolutely useless to us, then why should we hear him at all? So here Ishwara, this Vachaspati Mishra says that this doctrine which is expounded by Sankhya philosophy is not useless. It is very important. And what is the theme? The theme is the highest there can be. The highest aim, the supreme goal of man, higher than which there is nothing at all. This is the theme, this is the subject matter of this great philosophy. So what he does is, he attracts our attention by telling this. So when we open the book and first read this line, that this is the highest aim to which humans can aspire, immediately our attention is concentrated. So this is the way in which they get the attention of the reader, so that he knows the importance of what he is studying. So let us go to the first karika which we will discuss today. I'll just show you. So this is the first karika. The beginning itself, he discusses what we will discuss today. So see what it says. Dukkha traya abhighatat jigyasa tad apaghatake hitau drishte sa partha chet naikantatyantato abhavat. So this big word means na ekanta atyantata abhavat. What does it mean? It means that dukkha traya means the three kinds of sufferings, the three kinds of pains. When we suffer, what happens in a logical person? He immediately desires to know the means of alleviating the suffering immediately comes to his mind. Suppose we are having some stomach problem. So what do? Immediately we want to alleviate it. If it is due to acidity, we take some acid or we go to a doctor. So whenever we suffer in any way, the natural desire is to find the means to alleviate the suffering. Okay. So dukkha traya abhighata jigyasa tad apaghatake hetau. So from the torment caused by the three kinds of pain proceeds a desire for inquiry into the means of terminating them. We want to put an end to all kinds of pain. This is the thing. So second line of this words we will deal with later. It is a slightly different thing. So in order to show that we should not be confused, let us just concentrate on the first line, that from the torment caused by the three kinds of pain proceeds a desire for inquiry into the means of terminating them. This is the thing. So we all know that. So now you can see the translation is also given there. From the torment caused by the three kinds of pain proceeds a desire for inquiry into the means of terminating them. This is what the first line means. Now see how beautifully this has been analyzed. Superfluously if we read, okay, three kinds of pain, we have already had an idea of that. So what more could be said about this? It is natural that if anybody is in pain, he will naturally try to find a means of alleviating it. So what can be said about it? But many things can be said. Many things can be analyzed here also. Because you see, as I have said, in Indian philosophy, they never take anything for granted. Everything is analyzed threadbare. So, in the analysis of non-existence, you had seen that even something like non-existence, how wonderfully they have analyzed, is it possible or not? How is it possible? How many types of non-existence are there? It is amazing. So, in this simple sentence, many points are there. So let's see how the great Vachaspati Mishra explains this verse. Okay. Now he says the subject matter of this Sankhya philosophy is the termination of all kinds of suffering. Okay. Now, this desire, this inquiry has taken place only when some conditions have been satisfied. If those conditions had not been satisfied, there would have been no cause, no occasion for this inquiry. So what are these conditions? Okay. Number one, he says that we would not have started this inquiry, number one, if there existed no suffering in the world. If suffering did not exist at all, then what would be the need of inquiring into anything? So this is the first thing. If there had been no suffering, if everybody had been happy, there would have been no interruption of that happiness. If the world had been a rose garden, so to say, then this inquiry would be superfluous. This is the first condition. Okay. Second condition is that if there was suffering, but we would not have desired to get rid of suffering. We don't desire to get rid of anything, everything, anything and everything. I can't see without my spectacles. If somebody says, get rid of your spectacles, I said, I don't desire that. It would put me into inconvenience. So if suffering was like that it was something which we would not desire at all, the removal of that, then also there would be no occasion for this inquiry. This is the second thing. Third point is, suffering is there, suppose, and we also desire its removal, but if this removal was not possible, then what would be the use of this inquiry? Everything cannot be alleviated or everything cannot be undone. Suppose a person dies. Someone whom we know, who is dear to us. So we want that he should be alive again, but we know it is simply not possible. So naturally there would be no inquiry on how to bring that person alive again, because we know it is not possible. We desire it and we feel pain because of that, but there is no inquiry in something which is impossible. So 3 points are, if there was no suffering, this inquiry, there would be no use. If we desired suffering, then also it would be of no use. If the removal of suffering was impossible, then also there would be no use. So how could the suffering, removal of suffering, how could it be impossible? Suppose we assume that the removal of suffering is impossible. Then under what conditions can it be impossible? First, if the suffering was eternal. If it is eternal, you cannot remove, you cannot get rid of that. It is impossible. See, if something exists forever, you know, it will be impossible to get rid of that thing. So, suffering can be non-removable under two conditions. First, if it is eternal. And second, if the means of knowing its removal we don't know. It may be possible, but we don't know. Suppose my computer breaks down today. I know that it is possible to get it in working order, but I won't make that inquiry because I know it is impossible for me. I have to go to someone else. So if suffering was non-removable, its eradication was not possible, then there would be no inquiry. And this can happen under two conditions. First, if the suffering is eternal, and second, if we don't know how to remove that. And if there existed the possibility of its removal, suppose we say, no, suffering is not eternal. We know that it can be eradicated. All the saints and sages have told. But if this knowledge of the subject matter which we are going to study, if this was not capable of removing this suffering, then there would be no use in studying this. Now there is a book. Suppose this book, one book is there. It is a book on physics. I want to study astronomy. It is possible for me to study this book, but this is a physics book. It won't give me the knowledge of astronomy. So Vachaspati Mishra says, okay, even if the removal of suffering is possible, suppose, but if what we are going to study, Sankhya philosophy, if the knowledge of that philosophy was unable to remove that suffering, then also there would be no use of studying this philosophy. But fortunately, here all the conditions are satisfied. So I'll just give this in a chart so that you can have an idea of these points. One second. So here you can see this inquiry which you are making now would be superfluous under 5 conditions. Just recapitulate so that it becomes clear to us. Number 1, you can see if suffering didn't exist in the world at all, but we all know, it is our experience, all of us have suffered at some time or the other, so that we know suffering does exist, it very much exists. Second point, you can see if it did exist but its eradication was not desired. This also we know that it is not valid because we all desire to get rid of suffering. Third point, or suffering did exist but its eradication was impossible. Fortunately, Vachaspati Mishra says, fortunately, this is not the condition, because the impossibility of suffering, removing suffering could be under 2 conditions. First, suffering was eternal, there you can see number A, and we were ignorant of the means of its eradication. But thankfully, suffering is not eternal, and all the saints and sages know the means of its eradication. Then another point, number 4, even if there existed a possibility of its eradication, it could be that the knowledge of this treatise was not adequate for it. There existed a possibility, but this what we are studying today, it was not possible for us to get rid of suffering by the knowledge of this subject. That is also not true, because Sankhya shows how we can get rid of suffering. Last, 4b, or there were present some easier methods of its eradication. So we have admitted everything. We admit that suffering is there. We desire to remove that. This eradication is possible. Suffering is not eternal. We know how to remove that, and this treatise will help us remove that. But if there was some easier method of removing that, why should we study this philosophy? If there are two ways, if suppose there are two ways in which we can get rid of suffering, and the study and practice of this philosophy is the more difficult way, then why should we study this philosophy? This is the thing. So here this Vachaspati Mishra says that all these conditions, if it existed, this inquiry could be superfluous, but none of these exist. Actually, suffering does exist. We do desire its eradication. Its eradication is not impossible because suffering is not eternal, and it is not that we don't know the means of its eradication. We know. And this, what we are going to study, the Sankhya philosophy, is very much adequate in removing our suffering if we practice those principles. And last but not the least, there is no easier method of removal of suffering. This is the thing. So I hope your head is not spinning. Yeah, this is the logic through which we go through. Because otherwise, he says there would be no point in studying this. But suffering very much exists. It is not eternal. There are means to get rid of it, and we very much desire to get rid of it. And there is no easier method, unfortunately. We all, our whole life we spend, whole life in trying to get rid of suffering and getting only happiness. We go round and round. We go here, there. We go to USA, we go to Canada, we go to Alaska, we go to cruises, we go to restaurants, we go to balls, we make friends, we earn hundreds and millions of dollars just for this one aim. Just one aim. But unfortunately, the author says, my friend, this is a wild goose chase. You cannot get rid of suffering in this way, and if you just open your eyes, if you just use your brains, which is given to earning dollars, if you use just that for just a little while, you yourself will realize that nobody has been able to get rid of suffering in that way. So there is no easier way. This is the only way. So now when we understand these points, we are fit to start our study. When we are convinced of all this, nobody can deny this. Nobody can deny that suffering exists. Nobody can deny that we want its removal. Nobody can deny that saints and sages all over the world have said there is a way. What did Buddha say? I will show you a way out of suffering. What did Jesus say? Those who are laden with great burden, come to me, I will give you rest. Giving rest means getting rid of suffering for all time to come. So all the points are satisfied. Okay, now we can go into the subject matter. So from the torment of this threefold suffering, now we have already discussed the threefold suffering, but we can again mention it just to refresh our memory. There are three kinds of suffering. See how it is divided. This also has to be learnt. Who would have thought that suffering also can be divided? The cause of suffering, actually. Suffering cannot be divided because suffering is what the pain we feel, but its cause can be divided. So what are the three causes? Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika, Adhidaivika. So these three words sound difficult, but they will be very easy to remember if we just know the meaning. Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika and Adhidaivika. So this Adhi in the beginning of the three, Adhi means concerning. Adhi. Adhi means concerning. Atmika, Atma we know it means the self. So Adhyatmika is suffering which we experience from our own self. What is our own self? Our mind and body. Adhyatmika means the suffering which concerns our own self. Our own self is the cause of that suffering, not our real self, mind you, but that which we have taken for ourselves, the mind and body. So that is called the Adhyatmika suffering. We all know that Adhyatmika suffering is of two types, physical and mental. Physical we all know, stomach pain, tooth pain, hand pain, leg pain, everywhere pain. So that is the physical. And mental we know, greed, anger, infatuation, fear, envy, so many kinds of are there. So this is the Adhyatmika suffering. Next is Adhibhautika. Now Bhuta means all these pranis. Those who are the living beings in our world. Okay. So Adhibhautika means that which is caused by other beings. That is man, beast, bird, reptile, plants, anything. Man causes suffering to man. Animals also cause suffering to man. So that kind of suffering, the cause of which are other men or wild animals or animals, anything, that is the Adhibhautika suffering. The third kind is Adhidaivika. So Adhi and Daivika. Daivika means Deva. Deva means supernatural agencies. So supernatural agencies means in Indian tradition there are many supernatural beings like Yaksha and goblins and all that. And under this kind of suffering, some say that even the sufferings which we experience due to nature, for now we are experiencing a terrible heat wave. We are so uncomfortable. So this actually is also caused by some supernatural agency, because Indian tradition says that there are some gods who are presiding over this. Rain, thunder, heat. So those are supernatural beings. So we should pray for them for removal of this suffering. So these three kinds of suffering are there, causes of suffering, and every living being experiences those. Suffering due to our own mind and body, suffering due to other beings in the world, and suffering due to supernatural agency. So this is the analysis of Dukkha Traya, three kinds of misery or suffering. These are the three kinds. Okay. Now it says Dukkha Traya Abhighata. Abhighata means torment. We are suffering. When we suffer, there is a torment. We are being tormented. So what is the nature of this torment? This nature of this torment is the connection. This is very important. It Sanskrit says Chetana Shakti Pratikulataya Abhisandho Abhighata Iti. Abhisandha is connection of this Chetana Shakti, the consciousness in us, the connection of that consciousness. Connection with what? Dukkha Trayena Antakarana Vartina. the three kinds of suffering which exists in the mind. The three kinds of suffering which exists in the mind when our Chetana Shakti, the conscious principle in us, connects with that, then we experience suffering. That is the torment. So if the Chetana Shakti is not connected with that, we would not suffer. Suppose we are undergoing a procedure, we are undergoing a surgery. What happens? Previously there was no anesthesia. What used to happen? The terrible pain, people would not agree to be operated upon. Many would die. That pain of the surgery is so terrible. How can you stand it? So what happened then? Their conscious principle was being connected to the body when the body was being cut open. Then came that miracle anesthesia. What did it do? It put us to sleep. We don't know what is happening, what the surgeon is doing. The sentient principle in us, it is there, but at that time it is not connected with our body. Our Chetana Shakti is not connected with the torment what our mind is experiencing, our body is experiencing. Many times we see that, we read that, I have not seen that, but I have read that when somebody hears a terrible news, sometimes people faint. They lose consciousness. What can be the reason? One reason may be, I'm just guessing, one reason may be that the mind, it cannot bear that suffering. It wants to disassociate itself with that. So it goes into an unconscious mode when it will not be conscious of that. So when the Chetana Shakti, when our sentient principles is disassociated from the torment of our mind or body, then there will be no suffering. So the torments caused are only by this association. This is very important to remember. From this it follows, if we can break this association, only then can we get rid of all kinds of suffering. So, dukkhatraya abhighatat. This is the meaning of abhighata. So from there springs a jigyasa. Jigyasa means a desire. Desire for what? Tad apaghatake hetu, into the means of terminating this suffering. Okay. So this suffering, all of us, whenever we see that we are suffering in any kind, automatically the desire in us springs to eradicate it. Okay, this is the meaning of the first line. So now let us go into the second line of the verse. Let's see what does it say. Again I will show you that verse. Let me share it again. So this is the first verse. We've already analyzed the first part of this, the first half of this. Second, let us see what does it mean. Drishte sa partha chet na ekanta atyantata abhavat. Okay, now here an objection is raised. An objection is raised what? that suppose we say that this inquiry is superfluous because easier means are there of eradicating suffering. When we had discussed those 5 points, the last one, as you will remember, was that if there is an easier way to do something, why choose the difficult way? We are not, if anybody is foolish, only he will do that. Suppose there is a 15-story building, we have to go to the top floor. So if there is a lift in working order, only a fool would climb a staircase. Or, of course, someone who desires the exercise, that is no problem, that is okay. But otherwise, why should we put ourselves under unnecessary strain if there are two ways of doing things? If there is an easier way and difficult way. So here an objection is there that okay, we admit what you say, but the way which you are showing us, it seems to be very difficult. Reading all this philosophy and all that, so difficult. So there are various easy methods for removal of suffering. So this objection is raised, but the answer is also given here. The answer is actually those methods which you think are easier, they cannot remove suffering totally. Why? Two answers, there are two causes. There is an absence of certainty. It is not certain that they will remove suffering. And second, that removal, even if they remove suffering, that removal will not be permanent. So these 2 points we will analyze. First point, which is raised as an objection, that easier means exist. This we will analyze. Second, we will analyze the answer. The answer is there are no easier means, because the means you are suggesting, they suffer from two flaws. What are the flaws? They have an absence of certainty and they cannot eradicate our suffering forever. Okay, let us analyze this. So first we have to see what are the means which are suggested as being easier. What are the means? So it says that, the objection says that let there be 3 kinds of pain, no problem. And we also desire its removal, and we know that removal is possible. But the inquiry into the subject matter is not worthy of pursuing, as easier visible means are there which are capable of removing pain. That is, now Sanskrit saying is there, a very popular saying, Akke chen madhu vindeta kim artham parvatam vrajet. So people first, in the olden days, maybe people used to climb mountains and get the honey from the bee hives and all. But suppose Akke means griha kone. Suppose in your room itself there is honey. Then why go to a bee hive and take all the trouble of getting honey from there? So they say that visible means are there which can remove suffering. Then why study all this philosophy and why adopt all these difficult means? So what are the means? He says that for physical pain, you just go to a doctor. If you are suffering physically, why study this philosophy? My goodness, go to a doctor. He will remove all your pain. Okay. And mental suffering, if you are having mental suffering, have nice food and drink and dress and ornaments, etc., etc. There are so many things which we all adopt. So do that. Why are you giving us a headache by all this philosophy and all? And if you say that this other things are there, this Adi Bhautika and Adi Devika, so storm, thunder, cold of Canada, just have a heater in your room. If you are suffering from heat, just have an air conditioner in your room. Why go all to this trouble? The means are so obvious. Animals, wild animals are there, just stay in a safe place. Just stay in a place where you can be protected from them. So all these three types of miseries can be removed by such easy means. So are you crazy that we want to practice all these austerities and discriminate between this Prakriti and Purusha and all that? So in answer, the author of the Sankhya Karika says, no. Your objection, although it sounds very good, it is not valid. Why? Two causes. First, that it is not certain that it will remove your suffering. It may not. You have locked your door nicely against any kinds of thief and all. You have adopted all the measures, but you go somewhere and there is a phone. Your house has been broken into. So you've taken all the measures, but it was not enough. Someone was smarter than you. So he broke into the house. And just a few days ago, we have seen what a great tragedy occurred. A house collapsed in Miami. So these things can happen. There is no certainty that you will be protected. And second thing is, even if you can get rid of suffering in those ways, it will not be permanent. You are feeling hungry. You take some food. Your hunger is appeased. But for how long? After 4 or 5 hours, you'll again go to the refrigerator and see what's there. So, now this terrible heat wave is there. We are waiting when it will go. But after that, what will happen? October, November, December will come. Whole Vancouver will be dark, rain, cloud. Then we will be putting on our heaters, not our air conditioners. So all these means are only temporary. They cannot remove your suffering forever. So though these are easily available, these means do not bring about absolute and permanent cure. So this doctrine which we are studying is not at all superfluous. It is not at all useless. So now when we are convinced of all this, we will study this philosophy with all seriousness. That is the thing. So we should ask ourselves whether we are really convinced of that. Every moment of our life, we should ask ourselves whether we are really convinced that suffering cannot be got rid of by any worldly means. Again and again, we should remind our mind, make an inquiry, because without this firm conviction, we will always be searching for means, these visible means which have been suggested. All of us are doing that in some kind of way. Whole life, since our childhood, till we go to the grave, most of us commit this mistake. We search for the means where the means don't exist at all. That is why it has been so elaborately analyzed in the first verse itself, so that by inquiry and by our own discrimination and seeing around the world, we can have a firm conviction that certain and permanent cure, certain and permanent termination of all kinds of suffering cannot be had by taking recourse to any worldly means. We have to look for that in another direction. So, what is that direction? We will see next time. So, our topic was suffering and the means of its eradication. So, we have analyzed suffering, how it exists in our life, how we desire its removal, how the removal is possible. Then we examined the three causes of suffering. Then we also examined a little of the visible means which can be of removal of suffering, which all of us are adopting. But unfortunately, we saw that there is no certainty for that. And even if the suffering is removed, it is bound to return again. In some other form, through some other cause, by some other means, or later in our life, at some other time, it is bound to return. All of us know that. We are old enough to realize that. So, if after knowing all this, we are again and again adopting worldly means to get permanent happiness and peace, let us ask ourselves that are we acting as rational beings? Are we acting as intelligent beings? So, on this note, let us end today. I think I've already given you a lot of headaches. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.